Welcome to Love Lies Chronicles.
I'd really appreciate your comment. It helps me understand if you enjoyed the story and how I can improve in future ones. She didn't take her coat off when she came in. That was the tell. I was at the kitchen table with a stack of drainage profiles and a red pen, half a mug of coffee going cold. She set her keys down like they weighed nothing and dropped a line I'd heard secondhand for months without anyone brave enough to say it out loud in this house. The girls were right. I should have listened to them. I'm Daniel Rhodes, 39, a civil engineer in Dallas. I plan floodways and keep buildings standing when the clay swells. I like things that hold. That sentence told me something in our life no longer did. The shift hadn't come all at once. It slid in sideways, the way a storm creeps under the door before you hear the thunder. 2 months back, Fridays became plans, and Saturdays became late. The Sundays after were sleep till noon and a headache, sunglasses on in the kitchen like we suddenly had paparazzi. When we were in the same room, we weren't in the same conversation. The we that used to plan weekends turned into I and my friends. My suggestions landed like flies on a window, buzzing, ignored, and eventually swatted. She'd scroll a screen inches from her face while I spoke, laugh at something that didn't happen in our house, then tell me not to take it personally. It's just a meme. I'd ask if we were okay and get a shrug size to end the discussion. Our place started reflecting the new priority list. Dishes lingered, laundry became a guessing game. If I mentioned any of it, the word controlling came back like an accusation you couldn't defend yourself against without sounding guilty. She rotated through a new uniform. Tight dresses in colors she never wore for me, lipstick that left marks on wine glasses she never washed, heels that clicked hard on the tile at midnight and softer at 2 in the morning. I noticed more time spent at a mirror that used to be shared space. The ring stayed on, but it became an accessory, not a statement. I didn't push. That surprises people when they hear me tell it. I'm not a man who argues to win small points. At work, we drill borings, we test soil, we don't guess. At home, I gathered my own samples. I watched who she became around her phone. I learned the names. The girls, in her telling, were always certain about everything except their own lives. One was on divorce number 2 and living back with her mother. Another called herself chronically single, like it was a brand. The third floated from job to job, city to city, and measured her weeks in stories about men who didn't text back. They were a chorus, and recently my wife learned all their lines. The excuses got younger while the calendar didn't. She started talking about missing out, about getting married at 29 like we'd committed a crime too early for a life sentence. Freedom, they said. Adventure. The way she repeated those words told me they felt new on her tongue, like a slogan you want to believe because it's printed clean and the font is confident. Freedom from what? A paid-off car, a roof that doesn't leak, a man who keeps his word? I kept that to myself. Tonight, the rooftop perfume came in with her, cheap sweetness over a stale edge. She let the keys fall, leaned on the counter, and watched me with the studied calm of someone who practiced this speech in rideshares and bathrooms. I circled a note on a cross-section in red, set the pen down parallel to the edge of the paper, habit, and met her eyes. They were bright in a way I recognized from other people's stories, the bravado you wear to keep from feeling the ground shift under your feet. The script came out in pieces. We've grown apart. She needs to be herself. The girls say marriage at our age is just a cage with better linens. There was a new phrase about settling too soon, as if 9 years together were a mistake you return without a receipt. Every line had a source I could name by city and hairstyle. For months, she fed me the warmed-over parts in smaller servings. Tonight, she plated the whole thing and waited to see if I'd swallow it. I asked one question. What exactly did listening look like? Silence, then a shrug that said everything. Space. Another borrowed word, wide enough to drive a moving truck through. The problem with space is that it doesn't come with instructions. You have to define it. She stood there like a defendant confident the jury's already with her. She wanted me to supply the rest, the arguments, the begging, the admission that I didn't measure up to a committee of women who drink toasts to independence on someone else's tab. I felt something go very still in me. More like when you're on site and the machine operator stops mid-swing because he hears a tone change in the ground. You can't see the void yet, but you know it's there. I watched her keep talking in circles to fill the quiet. I let her. Words are cheap when the decision is already made somewhere you can't see. There were small, private signs even before tonight that my center of gravity had moved. I'd stopped refilling the second toothbrush when it frayed. I left it alone to see if she would notice. I changed my emergency contact back to my brother without making a speech about it. I kept my gym bag in the truck instead of the closet, a choice that shouldn't mean anything but did. None of it was punishment. It was measuring the load on a beam that had started to creak. She circled back to the girls' lives like they were a destination, not a caution sign. Happier now. That was the line. I believe they were louder. That's not the same thing. I rinsed my mug and set it in the rack. The kind of movement that looks like nothing but becomes a mark on a timeline. She wanted me to pick a fight so she could prove herself right about me. When I finally said I heard her, she seemed almost disappointed. The performance needed a foil. I went back to my plans and underlined a detail I'd already underlined. Outside, traffic hummed on the tollway. Somewhere in the building, a neighbor's washer hit a spin cycle. Normal sounds in a house that didn't feel normal anymore. The thing about foundations is they fail quietly before they fail loud. Hairline cracks. Doors that start sticking in summer and never quite swing right again. You can keep repainting, or you can admit the slab moved. She took off her heels finally, crossed the room in bare feet, and stood over the table like the elevation plan of a person I used to know. I should have listened to them sooner, she said, softer now, like the echo after the shout. I nodded once. Not agreement. A record of what was said, in case anyone needed it later. Then I gathered the papers into a neat stack, slid the red pin into my shirt pocket, and looked at the ring on her hand as if I were seeing a detail in a drawing I'd missed the first time. Some changes you mark with ink. Others you mark by not arguing about them. Tonight, I did both. She didn't move away from the counter. Elbows planted, chin tilted, coat still on like she was poised for a quick exit if the scene didn't go her way. The apartment had that weekday quiet, the HVAC sighing, a car door thumping somewhere below, and into that she poured the next round. Freedom, she said, is worth more than comfort. The girls had told her that. She repeated it like a line from a seminar, rolling it around to see how it sounded in our kitchen. I let the sentence settle. Comfort, in my world, is a structure that stands through a storm. Freedom, the way she was using it, was a door she could run through without looking back. She wanted me to beg. I could feel the expectation, the way you feel static before lightning. The performance needed a counterweight, raised voice, slammed cabinet, a sorry I didn't know. I gave her none of it. She tried again. Stories about their nights, rooftops, a DJ with a name you had to shout to be heard, a married guy who flirted and then bought around because it's harmless. She laughed like we were friends sharing gossip. I listened like an auditor. Nothing in those stories was about joy. It was volume disguised as happiness. Then came the small cuts. You've gotten boring. We never do anything fun. You've changed. All of it thrown lightly, like if it landed, it was my fault for not having thicker skin. I thought about the ways I'd changed. Fewer late nights. More morning runs. I'd traded the novelty chest thumps of my 20s for a life that delivered what it promised. Boring looks a lot like reliable when you stop grading on spectacle. She wasn't grading on that curve anymore. She bragged about starting over like it was a challenge she'd been dared to complete. I could start fresh, she said, and I wouldn't be the only single one in the group. There it was, honest for once. She wanted to match a chorus. She talked about their divorces like a spa day. Not that bad. Paperwork, a few tears, then brunch. Happier now. That line again. She looked at me as if I should congratulate her for discovering an exit that came with applause. I asked the only question that mattered. Are you saying you want out? She stepped sideways. I'm just saying they have a point. No direct answer, just a shape drawn in fog. She needed me to supply specifics so she could keep her hands clean. I wasn't going to write her script for her. She filled the pause with more borrowed lines. Finding myself. Refusing to settle. The words sounded like decor in a model home. Smooth surfaces. Her tone was steady, but her eyes flicked too often. First to my ring, then to the door, like she was checking the exits and the evidence. People who are certain don't rehearse. I remembered her the first year we were married, when certainty looked like her laughing barefoot in our empty living room while we ate takeout on boxes because the couch hadn't arrived. No chorus then, just us building something we could both stand on. What she was performing now wasn't certainty, it was repetition. She was trying to convince herself as much as me. She changed tactics and painted a picture of our life with a mean brush. You plan everything. You like lists. You never just go. The implication was that spontaneity equals love. I thought of the projects that failed because someone ignored tolerances. Going wherever the night takes you is fun when the night takes you somewhere safe. My job made me suspicious of edges disguised as open roads. I didn't say that. When I did speak, I used the same calm voice I reserve for a contractor who wants to shave cost off rebar. What is going to look like to you? She blinked, surprised I wasn't defending myself. Space. That word again, stretched to fit whatever she wanted. Space from what? I asked. From being judged. From the feeling that I have to answer to someone. There was the truth inside the fluff. She didn't want a partner. She wanted a witness who didn't get a vote. She threw in a test to see if I'd flinch. The girls say a man who really loves you fights for you. It was bait wrapped in romance. Fight who? I asked. Your friends? Your phone? A moving target with no rules? Love isn't a street brawl. It's a decision you make on quiet Tuesdays exactly like this one. She didn't like that answer, so she reached for leverage. Maybe I only chose you because it was the next thing to do. Delivered flat, like a diagnosis. I nodded once to let the words be true if she needed them to be. Arguing with revisionist history is like arguing with weather. She tried money next, a lightly veiled thread about how divorce wasn't as expensive as men made it sound. The girls handled theirs fine. I could already hear the lawyer's voice she'd borrowed that line from. I pictured the spreadsheet on my laptop, not as a weapon, just as a reminder that I've always kept my numbers straight. Calm has a way of looking like weakness to people who live in noise. She mistook mine for surrender and pressed harder. She staged a little scene then, took off the ring and spun it once on the table, not quite letting go, like a child seeing how long a top will wobble before it falls, waiting to see if I'd snatch it. I didn't touch it. The metal wobbled, ticked against the wood, and settled on its side. She put it back on with a shrug meant to read as nonchalance. The act belonged to a story she'd been told and wanted to believe she could carry out without consequence. I noticed a hairline crack in her voice the third time. She said happier now. It happens on site too. The third pass of a compactor, the tone shifts. You hear the truth of the soil under the thrum. She wasn't sure. She wanted the social proof before the personal cost. I rinsed my cup again, though it was already clean, a useless motion that made a point to me and no one else. I wouldn't be goaded, and I wouldn't be recruited to make her case. In my head, I started moving furniture in an empty place I hadn't rented yet. I pictured a closet where only my shirts hung, a key that didn't jingle with another set, a Sunday morning that didn't depend on anyone's mood. Not fantasies. I mentally called my brother about the spare room I'd never needed. I saw the gym bag staying in the truck. I saw my name as the only one on a lease. While she kept talking, I laid out a quiet sequence of steps the way I always do. Order, not reaction. She tried one last angle, nostalgia. Remember when we used to stay out until 2 and then sleep until noon? As if the memory itself could shame me into proving I could be the man from a decade ago. I remember, I said. I also remember the rent due Monday and the projects due Tuesday, and how we were still happy because we were pointed at the same future. She didn't have a rebuttal for that because it required naming a future she hadn't thought through. The girls had given her slogans, not plans. The air had that post-storm stillness by the end, where everything is too bright. She realized I wasn't going to supply the drama line she needed for the screenshot later. She picked up her keys, then put them back down, indecisive. You're really not going to say anything? I said enough. She wanted me to validate her decision so she wouldn't have to own it. I let the responsibility sit where it belonged. When she finally retreated down the hall, I stayed at the table and reopened the plans. To mark a page I'd already reviewed, underline a note I didn't need. A ritual, the way you touch a familiar tool before a long job. The pressure had built the way it always does, inch by inch, then all at once. I felt clarified. She thought she'd cornered me into a response she could control. What she didn't see was that silence, in the right hands, is not retreat. It's alignment. And while she measured herself against a chorus, I began to measure the outline of a life that didn't require an audience at all. The room didn't need more words. I stood, slid the red pin into my shirt pocket, and walked down the hall. The bedroom smelled like her perfume and my laundry soap. 2 lives that used to mix without effort. Top drawer, right side, the small fireproof pouch with passports, titles, the copy of our deed. I wasn't taking anything. I just wanted to feel the zipper between my fingers and remind myself what responsibility feels like. Then I took off my ring. Warm from my skin, a thin circle I'd never noticed until the day I decided to stop pretending it meant the same thing to both of us. I went back to the kitchen with it between two fingers. She watched me cross the room like she wasn't sure if I was about to apologize or explode. I set the ring on the table, flat, not theatrical. "You have 72 hours, I said. Calm. The way I'd say a site visit is at 9 on Thursday. All in or all out. Not a feeling. A decision." Her mouth opened, closed, opened again. She tried to laugh. It came out thin. "You're being dramatic." I shook my head. "No, I'm being simple." I laid out terms like I would on a project. Clear, measurable, enforceable. If it's all in, then it's us, not a panel of friends. Couples counseling scheduled this week. Group chats on mute during dinner and after midnight. Passwords stay yours and mine stays mine. But secrets are not a category we keep. Weeknights aren't for rooftops. Weekends have a plan before Friday noon. She doesn't have to like those terms. She has to choose them. If it's out, we do it with paperwork, not sabotage. She blinked fast when I said paperwork, like the word carried a cost she hadn't priced. "The clock starts now," I said, checking the green digits on the microwave out of habit. 9:12 p.m. Tuesday. She accused me of treating our marriage like a contract. I didn't correct her. Contracts are how you build things that hold. She tried to drag me into a fight about who started what, whether I'd changed, whether I was controlling. I didn't chase any of it down the hall. 72 hours, I repeated, and stepped aside so she could walk past me if she wanted to leave. She didn't. She stayed by the counter, arms folded, as if posture could stop time. In my office, I opened my laptop and sent 2 emails that had been drafts for weeks. The first to a family law firm downtown I'd met with over lunch the previous Friday. A consultation I paid for quietly, because engineers don't drive across a washed-out bridge hoping the next plank holds. "Please prepare a petition for dissolution, standard split, no fault," I wrote, attaching the intake forms I'd already filled out. The second email went to our bank. "Remove authorized user from my primary card. Reduce limit on the joint card to a number that covered groceries and utilities and nothing that looked like a weekend festival." I changed 2 streaming passwords I pay for and set my phone to do not disturb for anyone not named family. I didn't block her. I drew a boundary and respected it first. In the guest room, I pulled clean sheets from the linen closet and made the bed slow and square. I placed a notepad on the nightstand and wrote 3 columns. In, out, undecided. Under in, I wrote the actions we'd take before Sunday. Counselor booked, dinner with phones face down, a plan for the next 3 months that acknowledged both our needs and the fact we live in a world that loves to distract. Under out, I wrote the first week's steps, exchange of lists, change of mailing address, division of the storage unit, a meeting with a mediator. Under undecided, I wrote nothing. That was the point. When I came back to the kitchen, she had her arms wrapped around herself like a winter coat. "You can't just issue deadlines," she said. "I can," I answered, "when the alternative is drifting while you take polls." She asked if I was threatening her. "No, I'm offering clarity." She said the girls said ultimatums are abusive. "The girls don't live here," I said, and felt the sentence land more for me than for her. She asked if I was still going to sleep in our bed. "No," I said. "I don't sleep where the decisions aren't." I left the ring where I'd set it. She stared at it like it might roll away on its own. I grabbed my keys and my gym bag and walked out. The hallway was cool, the elevator empty. Down in the garage, I sat in the truck and breathed, counted 10 slow seconds, then backed out like a man who has a map. I didn't drive far. 20 minutes on the tollway, 5 through quiet streets, and I ended up in the same grocery store parking lot I pass every weekday. I parked under a dead light and called my brother. I told him I might need the spare room for a week if she chose out. He said the code to his door out loud once, then texted it. That's how men who mean it help. I bought coffee at the 24-hour place and drank it in a booth by the window. Across from me, a busboy wiped circles he didn't need to wipe. A couple in scrubs split a pie, smiling like people who'd seen something hard and were happy to be somewhere soft for an hour. I watched the clock change to 10:03, 10:24, 10:58. My phone stayed dark. I wasn't waiting for it to light up. The decision belonged to her. The life that followed belonged to me. Back home, I moved my clothes to the guest room closet, one trip. I left her side of the bed untouched. I wrote a note, short and neutral. 72 hours from 9:12 p.m. Tuesday. If in, say it and we act. If out, say it and we sign. If silence, I'll choose out for both of us, Friday at 9:12 p.m. I placed the note beside the ring. Then I took a picture of the clock and the note and the ring. Not for leverage, for record. When people rewrite nights, it helps to own the facts. Sleep came easy because I had finally put weight on the truth, and it held. Morning routines didn't change much. I brewed 2 mugs by muscle memory, then poured one down the sink when she left it full on the counter. I packed a simple lunch, texted my project manager that I'd be in late, and sat on the couch for 10 minutes looking at the door like it was a drawing I had already detailed. At noon, I booked the counselor I'd found 3 weeks ago and sent her the appointment time with a single line. If in, I'll be there. At 2, the law firm replied with a draft petition attached. I forwarded it to my personal email and filed it under a folder named Slab. At 4, the bank confirmed the card changes. At 5, I texted my brother the word standing. He sent back a thumbs up and a photo of a made bed. She tested the edges in small ways throughout the day. A selfie from a lunch spot with the girls, captioned with some line about queens and crowns. When I didn't bite. By sundown, the apartment felt like a place where air had been exchanged. She walked in quieter than the night before, eyes flicking to the ring and the note, then to me in the guest room doorway. "You're serious?" she said. I nodded. Serious is what you are when playtime ends. She wanted me to promise that picking in meant forgiveness without consequence. I told her it meant work with boundaries. She wanted me to promise that picking out would still keep me friendly. I told her it meant decent, not available. When she went to shower, I stepped back into the kitchen and touched the ring once with my fingertip, a carpenter tapping a nail head to feel if it's set. Then I turned off the overhead light and left the lamp on low, a small circle on wood, a clock face glowing green beside it. 72 hours is long when you don't know who you are without a chorus. It's short when you finally do. Night 1. She started with light taps on the wall between our rooms, like we were teenagers playing signals instead of adults standing in a life we built. Then came the texts. "Can we talk?" I didn't mean it like that. "You're scaring me with this deadline." I didn't ignore her to be cruel. I let the ring and the note do the talking. I answered once. If you're in, say it and we act. If you're out, say it and we sign. I set my phone face down and slept like a man who finally believes the beam will hold because he measured it. Wednesday morning, she tried practical guilt. Coffee poured. Cup slid toward me like a peace offering she'd forgotten how to make. "This is childish," she said, standing barefoot on the tile, eyes scanning my face for the old soft spot. I took the cup, thanked her, and asked if she wanted me to confirm the counseling appointment. The answer would have solved everything. She wanted a conversation instead. "You're really doing this over something I said in a mood?" I shook my head. "No, I'm doing this because moods became policy." She tried a laugh that didn't make it to her eyes. "The girls say deadlines are control tactics." I told her again, "The girls don't live here." By noon, the support chorus weighed in. One of them DM'd me a paragraph about how real men fight for their wives and how I was proving I'm emotionally unavailable. I didn't reply. Another sent a screenshot of some quote about liberation and growth. Delete. A third, the one with 2 divorces and a spare bedroom at her mother's, wrote something that started with "as a woman" and ended with "you're threatened by her independence." I answered none of it. Silence is a hard floor. You can dance on it or leave. What I wasn't going to do was turn our marriage into a group project graded by people who never finished one. That afternoon, the card limit did its job. She texted from a brunch place. "Did you cut the joint limit?" It was embarrassing. I sent back the bank's number and told her I'd already covered the utilities for the month. "You're punishing me," she wrote. I said, "I'm protecting both of us. If you pick in, the budget becomes ours again. If you pick out, I'm not funding your exit rehearsal." I expected anger. What came back was a photo of a mimosa and a caption about taking a breath. Signal for her friends. Not for me. Wednesday night, she shifted tactics. Lingerie from a drawer I hadn't opened in months. She hovered in the doorway of the guest room like a question mark. "We don't have to be dramatic," she said, the voice low, the light soft. We could just remember. I looked at her like you look at a bridge someone decorated with lights to hide a crack. Desire is real. So is respect. If we're in, we'll remember in a counselor's office in a week of full days, not 10 minutes that postpones the decision. She held the pose a beat too long, then stepped away like a stage cue had been missed. I turned out the lamp and slept alone in a bed that finally felt honest. Thursday, the narrative widened. A mutual friend sent, "Everything okay with you two?" She posted something about choosing herself. I replied, "We're deciding." "I'm okay." Later that afternoon, her father called me. Not a man who calls often. He asked if I was treating his daughter kindly. I said yes, and told him exactly what I'd offered: 72 hours, counseling if in, paperwork if out, no smearing either way. He was quiet, then said, "Good. I'll talk to her." I didn't ask him to pick sides, but it mattered that someone in her life who wasn't part of the chorus heard a clean version of the facts. At 5, the law firm called to confirm receipt. "No rush," I said, and meant it. The document was a tool, not a threat. On the drive home, I realized I'd started narrating my days without the plural. Now we need groceries, just eggs and coffee are low. Small change, big truth. When I walked in, the apartment smelled like a perfume cloud had been sprayed to erase the day. She'd cleaned, the fast kind, where things are hidden, not handled. The ring still sat where I'd set it. The note had a crease across the middle, like she'd folded it, thought better, and flattened it out again. "I booked a table at that steak place you like," she said. "Phone's away." She said it like a woman offering a deal. I asked if she would cancel the girls' Saturday plans and commit to counseling. The shoulders sagged a half-inch. Why does it have to be so formal? Because formality is how you keep a frame square when the weight comes on. She didn't like the answer. Thursday night, the panic tremor came through. Not loud, just enough to change the tone of the ground. She stood in the hallway, hands tucked into the sleeves of a sweatshirt, hair undone, bare face. The version of her I met before the chorus. If I say in, "What do you need to hear?" she asked. It was almost a trick. I didn't give her a script to recite and resent. "Not here," I said. "See. Calendar invite for counseling. Saturday carved out for us. Group chat on mute after 9 p.m. A plan you write, not them." She nodded like she might try, then asked if I would hold off on telling anyone. "There's nothing to tell," I said. "We either act or we don't." The girls didn't take the pause well. One sent her a flyer for a rooftop party Friday night with a caption, "You need this." She left it open on the counter like a dare. I put it under the ring. That earned me a long look, part fury, part fear. She was starting to understand the social math. Rooftops are fun when you come home to something that holds. Less fun when home is the echo you hear after the music ends. Friday morning, hour 48, she tried the blame transfer. "You always pick work over me. This is why I need friends." I didn't defend a career that pays for the roof we're under. I said, "If we're in, we'll put it on the calendar. Your time, my time, our time, so nothing gets rationed by whoever shouts loudest." She rolled her eyes. "The girls say schedules kill romance." I shrugged. Romance died when respect did. That one landed. She left for a walk without her phone. First time in weeks. Midday, the quiet reality showed up. Her father texted me, spoke to her. "She's upset. Also, I'm not funding an apartment for space. You're handling this right." I didn't want applause, but it hit me then that other people were seeing the shape without me pointing at it. Around 3, the friend with the second divorce DM'd me again, softer this time. "I don't agree with how she's doing this." She's not hearing me. Hour 62, she came home with grocery bags, the good kind of groceries: garlic, pasta, fresh basil, the bottle of red we used to split on Friday nights before the rooftop era. She cooked. We ate at the table with the ring and the note pushed to the side like salt and pepper. She talked about small things: a bird that nested on our balcony, a client who sent her a thank you card, a recipe her mother used to make. It was almost normal. Almost. After dinner, she asked if I'd sit on the couch with her. I did, at the far cushion. The TV stayed off. The clock didn't. By hour 68, she tried confession as strategy. "I've been scared I'm boring," she said, eyes on her hands. "The girls make it sound like if you don't choose adventure, you disappear." I told her disappearing happens loud too. She nodded. She asked if I thought she'd ruined it. I said, "You made a choice to listen to them. Now you can make a different choice." She bit her lip. "If I say in, Will you ever trust me again? I didn't sugarcoat it. Trust is rebuilt. It's not reset. If we're in, we start that work. She wanted yes, with no terms. I don't sell what I can't deliver. Hour 70, the desperation finally came clean. Quiet, like an apology whispered in an empty room. I don't want to be alone, she said. I don't want to end up like them. The irony was heavy. She'd used them to measure me. Now she was using me to measure them. I let this sentence sit between us, a weight both of us could feel. What she didn't know was that the 72 hours had done their work on me, too. I'd watched her cycle through guilt, seduction, blame, nostalgia, panic, and finally something that looked like truth. I'd also watched my own line hold. I hadn't raised my voice, threatened, or begged. I'd made a plan and kept it. The clock was a mirror, and in it, I saw a man who could walk either road with a steady step. At hour 71, she asked if she could sleep in our bed, just for tonight, to think with you close. I told her the guest room was made, the sheets clean, the door open. If you're in, I said, you won't need to borrow closeness to make the decision. She went quiet. She looked at the ring, then at me, then at the door to the hallway. She stood there in the small circle of lamplight with a face that finally looked like the version of her I might be able to trust again, if she chose it without a chorus. By hour 70, I already knew what I would do at 72, no matter what came out of her mouth. Just the clean choice a man makes when he refuses to be negotiated down from respect. The deadline was about freeing mine. And as the green digits turned, steady and indifferent, the game she'd borrowed from her friends fell apart in the simplest way possible, without my participation. Hour 72 arrived without ceremony. The microwave digits rolled from 9:11 to 9:12 and kept going, the way time always does when you stop pretending you can bargain with it. I stood at the table where the ring had lived all week, slid a manila envelope beside it, and waited for her to join me. She came down the hall slow, sweatshirt sleeves over her hands, hair still damp. For a second, I saw the woman from our first apartment. Then I saw the chorus behind her, even in their absence. I stayed with what was in front of me. I made my decision, I said. Calm, the same tone I use when I tell a contractor a pour didn't meet spec. We're done. I turned the envelope so she could read the tab. Petition. Her eyes jumped from the word to my face, looking for anger. There wasn't any. Just the quiet that comes after you finally set down a weight you've been pretending wasn't heavy. She tried to get ahead of it. I was going to say in. I was going to text the counselor. I cooked. She stopped when she heard herself making a list of gestures instead of a commitment. Tears came, not loud, just there. Can we try? She reached for the ring like it could buy her time. I shook my head once. You asked the room to vote on us. I'm not in that kind of marriage. I won't live inside a poll. She said I was throwing everything away over a bad week. I told her the week was the diagnosis, not the disease. Respect isn't a mood, I said. We didn't lose it last Tuesday. We just stopped pretending. I opened the envelope, slid the papers onto the table, and placed a pen above the signature line. No lawyers in the room, no posturing. We'll do the decent version, but we will do it. She went through the cycle I'd seen all week, only faster. Blame, then nostalgia, then fear. She asked if there was anything she could say to change my mind. I told her there was only a history and a choice. You made yours, I said, and I've made mine. She flinched at the steadiness more than the words. Drama is easy to fight. Clarity is not. I gave her the guest room and the weekend to pack the essentials. I texted the law firm that we were proceeding and booked the mediator her father had recommended. I called the building manager and scheduled Monday morning for a lock rekey. Not to exile her, but to end the half-life where people drift in and out while calling it thinking. In my inbox, I moved the counseling appointment into a folder named Undone. Saturday, her father came by with 2 boxes and a face that knew this was coming. We stood in the entry and he said what decent men say when they've watched a line get crossed too many times. I'm sorry. I told him I was taking my side back. The girls tried to convert it into content. One posted a story about leaving controlling men with a filter that made her skin look like plastic. Another messaged me that I'd regret letting a good woman go. The third, the only one who'd shown a flicker of doubt, sent a single line. I hope you do what keeps your dignity. I didn't reply to any of them. Silence again, the hard floor. They could dance or leave. We divided the easy things first, because momentum matters. She took her winter coats, the jewelry box, the handmade mugs we bought in Marfa. I kept the tools, the dining table I refinished last fall, the picture frames I'd hung with a level and a patience she used to admire. I asked about the couch. She shrugged, like furniture had stopped being real. I kept it. The ring stayed on the table until noon Sunday, then went into a small padded envelope with her name on it. I wasn't going to throw it or pawn it or keep it like a trophy. It was a promise we both broke in different ways. It belonged back with the person who couldn't carry it. By evening, she'd filled the trunk and the back seat. We stood in the garage where the compressor hums and the concrete smells different after rain. She asked if we could stay friends. I told her no. We can be civil, I said. We can be fair. But I'm not staying available to someone who crowdsourced our marriage. She swallowed hard, nodded like she understood, and then asked if I would at least text when the papers were filed. You'll get an email from the mediator, I said. We'll both get copies. She got in the car. She didn't look back until she reached the ramp. I didn't wave. I went upstairs and opened the windows and let the place air out. Monday came with the clean work. Bank forms. Address updates. A new password on the Wi-Fi with a name that made me laugh. No chorus. I changed the emergency contact on my medical file to my brother, and the spare key on the hook moved to a small safe. I canceled the streaming services we never watched together and kept the ones I actually use. I stood in the bathroom and threw out the second toothbrush after a second longer than necessary. Then I bought a new mug on the way to the office. White ceramic, plain. Some things don't need to be announced. People noticed. My project manager, a man who's seen me through messy pours and tight deadlines, asked if I needed time. I told him I needed a good week of work. He nodded and handed me a site list that ran long. On Wednesday, a mutual friend texted a photo of the girls at some midweek rooftop, captioned "Stronger Together." I looked at the image and saw the tired in their eyes you only notice when you've slept. I put my phone face down and walked the slab with a junior engineer, pointing out where the rebar chairs needed to rise another inch. This is what a life looks like when the frame is honest. You do the next right thing until the day feels like yours again. Her father called once more to say she'd moved into a co-worker's spare room and to ask if I was still okay to keep the house. I said yes. He thanked me for not making a mess. You don't come from mess, I said. Neither do I. We left it there. The mediator filed. The signatures happened without ceremony. 2 adults made a choice, and a clerk stamped it. Sometimes I caught myself walking to the guest room out of habit, the way your hand goes to a pocket where you don't keep anything anymore. Habits fade when you replace them with other habits. I started running before sunrise again, the sky a flat gray that slowly takes color if you give it 20 quiet minutes. I booked a long weekend in Marfa for 3 months out, alone, not to reenact anything, just to stand under a big sky and remember that scale is one of the languages I speak fluently. I moved my books back to the living room shelves, the ones that had been cleared for plants that died while we were busy elsewhere. Plants need tending. So do lives. She texted once, a week after the filing. I made a mistake. No punctuation, like the absence would make it softer. I read it and didn't answer for a day. The next morning I replied with 2 words I could stand behind. Be well. She sent 3 dots, then nothing. I deleted the thread. I still run into pieces of us. The coffee place where the barista knows my name, but now only 1 order. The bench by the river trail where we once argued about nothing and then kissed like people who were sure. Those images pass through and out the other side. That's how you know you're not stuck. The picture doesn't ask you to live there. Men will tell you they fought for what mattered. I did too. I fought for the part of me that refuses to be measured by a committee or a countdown clock. I set a boundary and enforced it. That's a kind of love you owe yourself before you owe it to anyone else. I didn't deliver a speech to her or to the world about what happened. People can hear tone even without the words. In time, the story made its way back to me in fragments. She moved again, farther out. The girls are still meeting, the table's smaller now. The rooftop photos get fewer likes. Maybe she's happy. Maybe she's not. It's not my ledger anymore. My house is quiet and clean in mine. The ring is gone. The note is in a folder with other finished things. I drink coffee from a plain white mug and read reports about soil that shifts if you don't build right. Respect is not a negotiation. It isn't something you coax out of someone or bribe with better nights. It's the ground you pour before you set the frame. When someone starts chiseling at it, you don't argue about every chip. You stop the chiseling. You backfill. You walk away if you have to. I did. And in the clean space after, when friends asked how I knew it was time, I gave them the only answer that matters. I stopped waiting to be chosen by a chorus. I chose myself.
Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments, and do not forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel.